Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. In today's video, we're going to review this. This is the Ridgid 13-inch thickness planer. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dan Shannon. I enjoy woodworking as a hobby and being out in the shop. On this channel, dive deep into my shop as we explore tools and tool reviews, as well as chatting about everything related to woodworking. If this grabs you by the tool belt, please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Welcome back. For those that are new to my channel, welcome. Those who have subscribed and returning, thanks for coming back. So in today's video, we're going to do a review of this thickness planer. We're going to touch a little bit on the use of it, also what you might want to do for the maintenance, so the maintaining of your in-feed, note-feed table, as well as your rollers, how to maintain them. So let's jump in. Is model number R4331, and this is a 13-inch. So how you know it is a 13-inch is the in table is the difference between here and here, and that's the max board width that you can process through the thickness planer. So a lot of times you can buy wood, it's already pre-done, meaning your surface. As you can tell here, this is a piece of red oak and it's very rough. So the goal of having one of these thickness planers in your shop is to remove the rough layer on the top. So I had a bunch of this from a mill and I needed to clean it up for project use. So that's what got me into buying this Ridgid thickness planer, as well as their LSA service agreement for this tool. So let's jump in for some special features. So let's go over some features that this, I think it's impressive, Ridgid 13-inch thickness planer has to offer. So you notice first of all, this is your in-feed table. And you can actually fold it up, so when you're not using it, you can have it as a small blueprint, so it doesn't take up a lot of space in your shop. You also notice down here there's adjustment bolts. So what that does is, if this table isn't level, this in-feed table isn't level with the rest of the planer, you can change the bolts on either side to raise or lower the pitch of this in-feed table. There's ways to do that with a level to give you a nice in to out ratio, so your boards aren't cupping or warping. Also, if you go a little further on the front, you notice we have the on and off button as well as a safety piece. So on the front, this is your blade unit, your deck, and this is your switch. So you just pull this off. This is your safety piece, so there's no power. You can't engage this tool at all when this is out, which is great if you have kids or if you just want to be safe in your shop. If you don't want to unplug it, you can do that in a quick minute to save on the safety part of it. Alright, so you're probably wondering what this is. It's called an indie cut, and what that allows is, if you have a board, I'll grab a piece here that I have, and if you notice, if you slide it up to the face, you'll notice this gauge will actually creep up from 0 all the way to 1/8. So when you go to run your board through, that gives you an idea of how much surface you'll be removing with your blades from your deck unit. So your blades are in behind. There's an easy way to change them or swap them. The blades are two-sided, and there's 3 of them. So as they dull, you can actually take them out and flip them around, which is quite nice. It gives you a little bit more time out of your blades. So that's the front feature that allows your settings for your board and the layer. Over here, you'll notice there's a lock. So this lock controls this entire deck, and it pinches in on these 2 threaded rods you can see here, and that raises and lowers with this spindle at the top. But if this is in the lock position, you cannot move the deck up and down, which is great feature. If you run a board through, it won't cause any issues that you might have with the wood because it's in the lock position. But if you unlock it, of course, you can raise and lower that blade system up and down as needed. And right next to the lock is your measuring tool. So this is a tape that's put on here, and this gives you an idea on your cutting height. So say you had a board that was 2 inches, you could measure with this gauge, make sure it's accurate by putting a board that's 2 inches, bringing that down, and then double checking to make sure this reader is correct. There is 2 adjustment screws there to modify that up and down depending on how accurate that is. But usually out of the box, in my case, it was accurate, so I didn't have to touch that. So that was kind of nice. And so that's kind of it for the front. If we swing around to the side, it's called a repeat a cut. And what that does is, say there's a board. Right now it's at 1/8, and you can do it all the way to 1 3/4. So say your board you have here, this is say 2 inches, and you want to bring it down to say 1.5 inches. And that's your exact height that you want your board. Well, you would just bring this to the 1.5 inches by rotating this. I can't do it now because the deck is too low, but you can bring it to the 1.5 inch spot. So we'll just say inch for now because that's where it will stop. And what's great is you raise your deck, you do your passes every quarter turn to take off a little bit of wood, and then once it gets down to the inch, it can't go any lower. So this deck system will not drop any further, which gives you the inch profile that you're looking for on your board. Well, that's perfect. So you got your inch that you needed, that you wanted in the end, from 2 inches to 1 inch, which is a lot of wood to take off. And you can do, say, 10 boards. So you do the same process from start to finish with your board. So you'd start your deck at 2 inches, and then you'd slowly take the grade of wood off as desired up until you get to your repeat a cut. So I love that. I had to do a project with this this wood wall I was doing for a mantle, and I needed everything a certain thickness, so this repeat a cut was amazing. Alright, so enough about that feature. I think I got a lot of details on that one. So we'll slide up to the top, and you'll notice here there's a dial. So what this dial allows is it raises and lowers the deck. So we'll unlock it, and you'll notice here you can see that it goes up and down. It's going down now. Raise it up. It actually takes a while to bring the deck all the way up, but what's great about that is it does it in small increments. So what I mean by that is there's a ring, if you can read there, it says down 1/4 turn for every 1/64 inch. So what that means is quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and quarter turn. So you get the idea with that and how much it will remove off of your workpiece. You can also, if you're not sure, you can also double check with this Indie cut with this ball bearing, and that gives you the readout as well of how much wood you're removing at a time. So between this and this, it gives you a great indicator on how much wood you're removing. And I can't stress enough the fact that when it comes to these planers, they don't like you removing too much wood at once. So if I was having this board here, I would not remove, like, say 1/16 or even 1/32 each pass, because what will happen is your motor, so two things. Your motor will heat up and will cause it to trip. So there's a trip fuse here that you have to restart because this will get too hot. And two, your life of your machine will slowly diminish because you're basically taxing the motor too much than you need to. And so those are two things, as well as your board. A lot of times if you put it through and this is too high, meaning you're taking off too much wood, you'll have a lot of gouging coming out of your wood because it literally can't take off enough at a time. It's too much to bite into. All right, so let's go around the back of the machine. Here we are on the back side, and you'll notice the outfeed table into the middle table and then through the infeed table, all one piece. So what happens over time is this can shift and your infeed table can shift and change angles a bit. It shouldn't do it that much, but it never hurts to check it. And what I do is you put a level in through all the way through the machine to make sure that the infeed and the outfeed are at the right angle. And there's videos you can watch how to set that up. So this is just a basic video on the review of it, and also I'll do a couple hands-on passes of wood. The blades are inside here, and once they shred up the layer, of course it has to go somewhere, so it heads through and comes out the port on the back. I'll give you an idea. Here's a view on the inside, show you what that looks like. To get at the blades, you actually have a nice little tool around the side here that pops off, and it's great for storage. It's there full time, so you can access all your screws. This is a hex key, so you can get your bolts removed, and then this whole piece comes off. Also, if there's a jam, good to note, if there's a jam of sawdust that ever happens in here, make sure the machine's unplugged. But instead of sticking stuff in here and trying to pinch it into the blade system, there's a motor and a fan that blows it out. So instead of jamming the wood shavings in further, creating more issue, pop this off. You can have good access into the internals. And then the blade system is right under here in a roller, and you just undo the bolts, and there's a magnet on the top head of this tool that you just press it up against, and the whole blade lifts up. They are self-leveling blades. As soon as they go into their spot, they find their way, and then you just re-sync the screws back into the blade. So that's really straightforward. The manual has all that information in it for blade removal. So that's pretty much it for the features. It's got a nice top, so you can put your material, so once you run a board through, you can lay it on top and then get around the other side and bring that wood through as well. All this is just a great thickness planer. It has the rigid quality. Everything feels solid. This thing weighs a lot, so you can tell it's well built. It's got two handles here, so you can pick it up and move it around. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the features. So I'm going to dive into how to maintain this planer, and then we'll jump into the hands-on. Okay, so we went through the features of this planer. I try to give some detailed information on what each feature does and how it's affecting the performance in the machine and how your boards run through it. A lot of times you'll know if you use this on a regular basis, or even if you use it every so many projects, you're going to notice over time the performance of your planer will go downhill. Now, at first I thought there was something wrong with the planer. I didn't realize that you had to have certain maintenance on a planer, because a lot of tools, other than the blade, are pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of maintenance to do, the odd dusting or whatever if it has sawdust. But in this particular case, your table, your in-feed table, a lot of times over a bunch of projects, your boards will have buildup of materials. So whether it's sap or just overall a grit. So your in-feed table and your out-feed and even the inside table will not slide. So I was putting through a board, I noticed it was slowing down. I wasn't getting much push through the out-feed table. And I was like, what's going on here? There's got to be a way to fix this. So of course I went online, and the best thing to do is use a form of wax. So here I got turtle wax, hard shell. So you just put it on, smear it on. I did a table saw video for the top of your table saw. It's the same idea. Put a few drops on, smear it around, let it haze up, which means it's dry, and then buff it clear. So this is very smooth. Sometimes you'll just know from using the machine whether or not it's not performing the way it did when it was new. The other thing that happens with these planers, which I didn't know as well after using this one, of course, for quite a while, is your rollers. So your rollers on the inside, they'll get stuck with usually sap and different things, especially if you're using milled boards that aren't perfect. They'll have a lot of buildup on the surfaces. You cut through knots, all these different things will have sap in them. So the rollers on the inside will start to gum up. And how you're going to clean them, first you're going to unplug your machine and make sure it's not plugged in, because that's a blade in there. You got your, this is alcohol, so it's 99.9%. And I just bought this on Amazon, and you just take a rag and you dump some on the rag, and then you reach in very carefully. You can always double check. I usually go underneath and see where the blade rotation is. You just be careful, and you just run your rag back and forth on the roller. You can feel the roller in there, and there's two of them, one on either side, and they help roll the wood through. So over time, when they get gunked up, obviously they're not going to perform. So you're going to want to use some sort of a cleaning agent, which I use the rubbing alcohol. Works amazing. Your rag is usually quite dark, like this, by the time you're done, because there's so much buildup on these rollers. But once the wax is done and you put some sort of a cleaner on those rollers, man, this thing just runs through smooth. The wood goes through. You're not fighting with it on the other end. It's just perfect. And yeah, so that's kind of the maintenance. You got two rollers. very fine threads. So once in a while I'll spray them down with some WD-40 just to clean them up, because over time, of course, sawdust and dust in general will collect on them and cause, you'll know because this binds up a little bit, but double check, make sure your lock's not on, because I did that once. The lock was on and I went to move it and it just wouldn't work. So yeah, just make sure the lock's off, and then spray it, move it up, move it down, spray it, move it up, move it down. So that's kind of the maintenance on this machine to keep up on. Once again, always safe, always perform safety, you know, with the your switch and pulling this out, keeping it unplugged when you're working on it. Now, one thing to note before I start the hands-on is I've heard of people say that this machine overheats. There's lots of issues with the breaker. It shuts off. I haven't had any issue, and the main reason is, and I can't speak for everyone, this is just my personal example, when I put in a bunch of wood, I only took off just the slightest bit. Now, you're going to say, well, that's going to slow down your production and all that, which is true. However, this machine is not an industrial machine. It's for your average shop. So with that in mind, I'm only going to make small passes. And just like I said before, it does two things. It saves on the wear and tear on the motor. It also is better at the sniping. So you don't get the marks in the board. And that's the main reason. I want to keep this as long as possible. I want to make sure the motor is not overheating, and safety too, because if that gets in there and binds, it's all moving parts, so you want to make sure you're safe as well. But just kind of a note there, it's better to take off less and do a few more passes, so you ensure a cleaner cut on the top of your board as well, because it's not removing as much material, so it gives a nice cleaner cut, less sniping on the surface. And yeah, so let's jump right in. Let's get into this, and I'll show you some hands-on of this tool and how it works. Okay, I'm all set here. I have this unlocked. I brought the dial down to lower the deck. I'm going to double check by lining up my board. You can see that this needle moved, which means I grabbed just enough. The first time through, I found with the boards I'm dealing with, and you can tell they're very rough boards. This is the red oak, that you want to only do a slight bit, because in the length of a board, it could fluctuate up and down all through the piece of wood. So you always want to make sure you only take off a sliver. That way, if there's any valleys or height differences in your wood, it's going to plane it and not overwork the machine. So I have it all set up. I double checked to make sure I'm only taking off a little bit. That's perfect. I want to lock this in so that it won't cause any extra sniping on the board due to this deck moving up and down randomly. So without further ado, let's put this board through. So you'll notice there that just took off a nice little bit. So I'm going to keep doing that to bring this layer down. So I'll line that up again where the indicut is, and I'll unlock it, and I'll do it a quarter turn, right like that. Then I'll lock it again, then I'll back it up, turn it on. So you can tell there, the second pass, we got a lot more wood down, and Basically, you just keep doing the same process, lining it up, unlocking it, lowering the deck, and adjusting the indicut to make sure that you're only taking off a little bit. So we'll do a few more passes on the board here, lock it in place, pull it back, fire it up. So you'll notice here we're almost down to where the edges are actually planed, and that looks beautiful. From this roughness to this usability for a project, like, man, that really brings the wood, makes it come alive, all in this machine. So that's the hands-on, kind of the overall. Like I said, always bring your wood down only a quarter turn, and double check with the cut indicator, making sure you're not taking off too much wood at a time. And yeah, just a great tool. I really enjoy it. And let's go over some thoughts. So some final thoughts on this 13-inch planer. I would say I've had it for about a year, and my ownership, you can tell that I've been doing some hardwood, red oak. I've done quite a few boards for some projects, and this machine has never let up. It works great, but we'll strongly suggest the maintenance. So waxing, cleaning the rollers on a regular basis, that keeps your performance A1 on this machine. Thanks for watching today's video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, and don't forget also to check out this next video. So until then, stay safe and enjoy your shop.